Welcome back to the Bigwater Podcast. Here we are for another one. We kind of dig deep trying to find some kind of unique things, but also interesting and sometimes educational. And I don't know where this one's going to fall in, to be perfectly honest with you. And we joke about not having a budget for this podcast, but it's not really a joke. But if we did, we would play like some Bad Boys, What You Gonna Do, or something like that, because we have a game warden tell all. That's at least what I'm going to call it. We've got two current game wardens, at least that's what I'm going to call them. Also, we maybe even be corrected with that. But without dragging them out too long, give them an option of changing their mind, we're going to bring these two fellas in, and I got a feeling we're going to hear some pretty interesting stories because I've seen from afar some interesting things. So I can't even imagine being in the trenches with you boys. So we have got Brian Burry and we've got Matt Fisher. Is game warden, is that a real term, or is that not the proper term?
That's a real
Good enough?
term. Technically, we're investigators with the Lake Erie unit here.
Yeah, that sounds way more official. That sounds
Wildlife officer, game warden. There's a lot of other slang that can be used.
I got to be honest with you. I mean, I've never been so excited to talk to two game wardens in my life. This may be the first and the last time, but I appreciate you guys giving us your time coming on here. And it's like, most of the time we're not excited to talk to law enforcement. I mean, there's times we get bad raps on things, but can we be honest? Normally we don't want to see you guys, right?
As long as you're within the law, I think everything's good. And I've certainly never had a problem with you. So I think we're good.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, honestly, like I don't see you guys a lot because this morning there's like 6 footers, and so me and my buddy, those 40 walleyes that we caught, it was a good morning, right?
Slipped them right in the cooler.
Right in the battery compartment. But
when I pull in Zurich and there's 150 boats in the lot, I'm certainly not looking for Mr. Fish USA. So
yeah, I'm tough to not find sometimes. But so in all seriousness, I mean, I think when forget fishing or hunting or whatever, I think law enforcement often gets a bad rap. Sometimes I think some people don't support them on things. We won't make this into a political deal, but I think the thing that I've seen from afar with many guys in your office or in our zone where I'm generally fishing, or even when I travel, is that people are you're not out henpecking things. Like again, it's a violation catching fish 51 perch if you're allowed 50, yes. But I think that, and again, I know you probably don't want to say that out loud, but that's a very big difference than somebody that has 90, right? Like there's intention, there's somebody that's out there, the accidents happen, right? And then there's a big difference between that was not an accident. And I think that's some of the stories you've kind of prepared. I don't know what you got for us, but I've seen, like I said, a few from parking lots and things, and we start seeing coolers and handcuffs and all that good stuff. You got some good things going down. So that's kind of what you're going to do, right? You're going to give us some stories of some things as an example, and not that you guys are out looking to henpeck and nitpick and cross T's and dot I's. That there are people that go out there with an intention of just being, I mean, you say criminals, but just being scoundrels, right? That just are blatantly disrespecting the resource.
Yeah, I think Matt and I each have quite a few stories to tell tonight. And, we do run into the people that they miscounted their fish or they forgot to buy their fishing license. But, those aren't exciting cases and certainly not anything that we're talking about tonight. We've got some more interesting stuff for you.
Well, let's just get into it because people love stories, and I don't know most of these, so that's even the best part. I've only seen a couple from afar, so getting some of the details and some of the behind the scenes things, I think is a lot of exciting for people, and also this is people like hearing misery of other people. Let's be honest, but then also I think that some of the stuff is a little bit of education, right? On things that maybe people didn't know. I'm always amazed, even though ignorance is not bliss, as they say, but there are times that some of these things may be an education, like, hey, I didn't know I could do that. Now, I don't know how the hell you didn't know that, but maybe somebody out there didn't know, maybe, or we're going to say, now you can't say that you didn't know. So hit me with a good one right out of the gate.
Let's talk about our unlicensed guide over there, east, Matt.
Over east,
unlicensed guides.
Unlicensed fishing guide.
So we refer to him as Meatball.
Meatball. Burry will explain that a little bit more here when we get going. But I had an individual that is one of those cases that we worked a long time. Started back in 2018. got complaints on him that he was running unlicensed fishing guide. So obviously on Lake Erie, you got to have the Coast Guard license and the state license to be legal to run a fishing charter. Got a report that he had neither at this time. We tried to locate the boat, which we did, and we just could never make contact with the individual. So that went on in 2018, 2019. And then we kind of lost sight of him. What happened? He actually purchased a new boat. We knew he was still running, but we didn't know where he was at. And then a funny situation happened 2 years ago. We had this unlicensed guy. He was fishing off of East Lake, and he actually ran into a Amish boat. And the Amish guy filed the complaint. And when I started running the numbers on the boat, it turned back to this unlicensed guy that we've been looking for. So at this point, I put another case report together, and we decided to work it a little different way. And I had Investigator Burry try to make contact with this individual, in which he did. And I'll let him explain his conversation and what happened from there.
Don't call me Columbo, but is this like an like you're going to book a trip now? Am I stealing your thunder? Okay, I just want to see if I saw. Okay, go for it. I got you.
Yeah, so we booked a trip with him, and we had 4 of us went out there, and of course with his fish, 6 times 5, we could bring in 30, and so we went out, and it was really rough that day. And we thought we were going to cancel, but we didn't. We went all the way to the north. The wind was out of the north, so we ran north, turned around, went with the waves. They're like 6-footers out there, and within like 45 minutes, I thought we were close to our limit, and I said to the guy, I said, "Man, we got to be close to our limit already. It hasn't even been an hour." And so we counted the fish, and there was 24 fish in the cooler, and he goes, "Don't worry about it. We're going to go over our limit today." And so I texted Matt, who was waiting on shore in uniform, and he didn't believe me. So I'm like, "Well, I guess you're going to see when we get in." But throughout the morning, we were running the normal rods out each side, but he had what he called the meatball. So he had a downrigger, and this downrigger went down, and he had a 6-foot leader off of it with a lure on there. So, there's no sport in it at all whatsoever. It just bringing in meat. So about every 10 minutes, he'd have one of the people that was with us bring that meatball up on the electric downrigger, and there was almost always a fish in it. So, we got all those extra fish off the meatball. So eventually he goes, "Do we have our limit yet?" And he started laughing. He knew we were over our limit. And he said, "Well, we're just going to keep going." So we kept going. And eventually he said, "If we get some shorts, you can throw those in there too," which we didn't end up getting anything that was real short. But by the time we got into where we couldn't go any farther because we were in the shore, he said, "Well, we're done. Pull them up." Well, we had 42 fish in the cooler. Like I said, we were allowed 30. So he told me to take the trash can and take the trash out of the trash can, put some ice in the can, and put 8 small fish in the bottom of the trash can, and put the trash on top of it. So, of course, we're just doing what we're told. So we did that. And I thought, well, that makes no sense because we're still over our limit if we get checked. And so on the way in, he said, "Will you ever get checked?" And he said, "Oh, no, we don't get checked. It's no problem." So, of course, we get to the shore, and then there's Matt and another guy waiting. And the 4 of us that were on the trip, we paid our money and got the heck out of there. And then,
okay, so the first question is this: do I get to go on one of these undercover things for a free fishing trip?
Well, I don't know.
Again.
I mean, we might have just blown a little bit here, but I think you'd have to assume, because I've heard of this happening before. Like,
yeah,
this isn't the first rodeo with this, but I think this guy, it's like, this is like a Tosh 2.0 or something. Like, oh, let's see what else you can do, stupid. Like, okay, you don't have a license, you don't have all this, and then you tell somebody you've never met before. Not that it makes it any better or worse, right? But if you were with your neighbor or your high school buddies or something, I think it's not different, but it's different, right? Like, blatant. Obviously, this guy he's done this before.
Yes.
If there wasn't 6-foot waves and we had went out with him before, I can't imagine how many he would have let us bring in. Cause were we out there even 2 hours? I don't even know if it was 2 hours. But
About 2
in
hours.
order, I mean, it would have been quite the ordeal to pull on everything and run back up and set again. And like I said, we already had 42 and we could only have 30. So
Well, in
yeah, I
fairness,
can't
mean,
imagine.
I mean, in fairness, Meatball sounds like he's a decent fisherman.
Yeah, he's a
He
good
was
fisherman. So every time we brought up the electric downrigger and there was a fish on it, he'd scream meatball. Like he was very, very entertaining. We had a lot of fun. He was fun.
And this
He'd bring it
is
up and yell meatball. And then by the
is
end,
this
we
the
were all
Cleveland?
yelling meatball.
This is Cleveland area.
East of Cleveland, over by
Yeah,
East
that-
Lake
I always say
County.
there's something in the water over there. There's just it's a little different crew over there, a little bit.
It's a little
Yep.
different. Yes, it is.
So serious question, because I wondered this before, because I know there's actually someone who's a prominent guide now, if you want to call him that, who had this also happen to them. And
Yeah.
I remember I was just thinking, I was like, do you guys still have to pay him for the trip though? Because technically it's not a trip. So how does that work?
Well, that's part of the story. You're teeing up Matt.
I am absolutely ruining all of your punchlines, so I'm just gonna turn my mic off now and let you roll. But Meatball is upset about not getting that, but the fact that he doesn't get paid.
Well, he got paid. I paid him.
Yeah,
And
he paid
me and
him.
Matt came in.
Yeah, it was.
Oh
was
yeah,
a
because
little-
you have to have the money. The money has to exchange. Like you can't say, "Well, I didn't know you were gonna."
Yeah.
Okay.
Each
Right.
prosecutor is a little bit different on that, but this prosecutor wanted the guys to go on the trip and have the money exchanged. And to get that money back, it was a little difficult. We ended up calling the East Lake Police Department in for a little assistance. It got a little agitated there at the end, and he didn't want to give it back. Obviously, $1,000 in the pocket's a lot of money, but eventually he gave it back, and he of course went to court and everything, and did all that stuff. But yeah, it was difficult. It was one of the cases where, like I said, I've worked 4 or 5 years, and it was one of those that when it was done, it was a good one.
Yeah, I mean, because it would have been anticlimactic if Meatball used your money to pay off his fine.
Yeah, right.
I mean, obviously, I know that goes on a lot. Like, I mean, growing up in Toledo, where I was, there was probably not to this level of things, but there was like everybody worked at Hydromatic or Jeep or something, and they worked 410s, and every Friday and Saturday, Sunday, they worked charter, even whatever it was, whether it was this blatant or it was just taking buddies for money. So where is the official line? Because I get people ask all the time with me, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm not the law. I mean, we both know there's a gray area, but we also know that it's not really that gray. You can take money if you're fishing with your neighbor and go fill up his gas tank, but you can't purposely. That's got to be a gray area for you though, a little bit, right? I mean, for enforcement purposes.
Well,
because I could give you $200 and say, "Oh, that's for gas," and you're like, "Well, we burned $30 in gas."
If you're gonna take me fishing tomorrow, which would be great, by the way, and I brought the worms, and I brought the ice, and I gave you I don't know $20 for gas or whatever. It's within reason, but we're not. It's kind of like what you said earlier about somebody having one extra perch. I mean, that's not really what we're looking for. We're looking for, it's never less than $100 a person. Sometimes it's $200 a person. I mean, or somebody might post open seats for $50 a piece, and they have 3 people get on the boat and give $150, and they're running crankbaits, and they went a mile offshore. They spent $5 in gas. I mean, what's justifiable? What's reasonable?
Yeah, and again, it sounds like just like the 51 perch, you're probably not. There's too many things going on in the world to split hairs about somebody with a little bit of gas money. But if a guy is basically running a operation and he just doesn't have the licensing, like, and it's time after time, like, right?
And there's usually Facebook accounts, or there's some type of there's more to it. You build your case. So we had one a few years ago. The guy was on Facebook, and he was advertising for $125 a person. And he actually, I don't want to say the name of the charter, but he stole the name of another charter and acted like he was that charter. So he was getting their business, and we got a lot of complaints on it. We didn't go out with him, but he was operating through Facebook, and we're not going to give away a whole bunch of secrets tonight, but if you post things on Facebook, it's public and people can see them, or people have a way to get them. So he posted everything on Facebook, and we talked to several people that he was supposed to take out. He would show up drunk. He'd not shower. He didn't have safety equipment. The boat was a disaster. He never caught fish, never. Sometimes he would not show up.
Meatball catches them though. Meatball catches them.
Meatball is a hell of a fisherman. He's entertaining. You might have Meatball on here sometime. Anyways, this guy would not show up. I mean, he was doing all kinds of bad stuff. So he got charged for quite a few things, but we don't always have to go out with him. But there's these unlicensed guides, there's different levels of what they're doing. And I think you went out on that one this fall, didn't you, Matt? Over here.
Yep.
In
over
Fort Clinton. I mean, there's one while we're on the subject, you might as well hit that real quick.
Yeah, hit us with it.
Yeah. So that again, that was another unlicensed guide out of Port Clinton area. This guy was advertising for fall brawl trips. So we that was a little tricky booking that one. Also, it was I didn't have a good contact for him, so Investigator Burry helped me out with that. But one interesting thing with this guy is he would offer night trips, and the night trips. And I don't, usually the going rate's $800 to, maybe $1,000, but for his night trips, he was offering trips for $1,500 to $1,800 for a trip at night. And yeah, I asked him about that, and he said, "Yep, it's a safety issue. I got to take you guys out at night. I got to be a little bit more safe, and it's more dangerous." So, but that was one of the interesting things I found out on that trip. But,
did he? I want to know. I want to interject. I want to know because I might run a charter business with a license. This would be the wrong place to do that. But was he getting 1,800? Like, are you kidding me? You can ask for a lot of things. You can ask Cindy Crawford for a date too.
Right. I asked him how many night trips he had. He said he had none so far, but of course he had one the day after we took him down. So was it true? I don't know, but that's what he was charging for the night trips is $1,800. So now the trip that we went on, he charged, I believe it was right around $1,000. That was just a day trip. Of course, he said he was going to put us on the big fish, and 6 hours later, I think we ended up with 2 fish. So it was one of those trips that it was long, but eventually worked out at the end for us. So,
maybe his business prowess and then Meatball's fishing, they could be a massive team.
That is true.
They're a little ways apart from the sounds of it, but that could be, yeah. Oh, amazing.
You got to tell them about your motor issues, Matt.
Yeah, well, that was the most interesting thing. So usually I've been on a few licensed guides trips, and usually the captain drives the boat. I think I drove the boat more than he did that night, and it turned out at the end we were set up. We were doing a drift, and it was a pretty good kind of southwest wind that night, and I was behind the wheel, and he was doing some stuff in the back, and of course he had his drift sock out. And we made a turn and started sliding back a little bit, and he got on the wheel and started, I don't know what he was doing actually, but he ended up getting that drift sock in the starboard engine, and it seized that up. And now we're sitting there with one engine. It's building probably good 4-footers. So we had about a 2-hour drive back to the boat launch. I always thought it was kind of funny that I did more driving than he did that day. Well, which good thing I am a licensed captain, but I wasn't working that night.
We're gonna need to see your documentation before this podcast is over, by the way.
Yeah.
One of the things we usually do at the end of those is we'll do a safety inspection because they're running a business and they're not properly licensed. This guy did not even have life jackets for the people on board. So, we come in on one motor, no life jackets, no credentials. Anytime we do one of those things, I've never gone on one of these and not had additional violations in addition to the fact that they weren't licensed. It's always something.
I guess on one aspect, you kind of go not surprised, but then on the other, you're like, really? Like, I guess maybe that's just because I don't think, I guess like a criminal, you're like, same thing. It's like, hey, I should have everything in a row if I'm going to be doing this. Like if I'm going to rob a bank, I shouldn't just be willy-nilly and, getting a parking violation or something, or, but I guess that's bringing common sense into an illogical situation, perhaps. But I mean, how often do you? I mean, I know you don't know, but do you get a lot of these where you maybe either can't pursue it, like you said, like Meatball, you were after him for several years, or I mean, do you think
Yeah.
this happens a lot? Because I feel like it happens a lot, and maybe it's not Meatball bad, but it's people that are taking people out for way more than gas money and calling it gas money. Especially
Yeah.
because of the fall brawls and stuff like that now. They're like, yeah, I got a boat, you don't. Yeah, here's the deal. Like you said, we're going 2 miles offshore, and we're going to charge you $100 for fuel each.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
We get, I mean, we have complaints where we're working right now, and, sometimes we don't have to go out with them. Sometimes we might just sit back and do surveillance. And a lot of our job is surveillance, and a lot of what we're going to talk about is surveillance, and not get too much more into details of that other than what the cases were. But, we don't necessarily go fishing with these guys. So,
The one that always surprises me, and I don't maybe you can comment on this or not, but I haven't worked out of a marina, for years because I'm a trailer guy. But those become like families, right? Where Bob because he's been in slip one and Jim's in slip two and all that. And I hear secondhand all the time. And again, fishing, you hear a lot of things in fishing, right? Like gossip central. But how many guys are in a marina and like, hey, Jim on tier 3 over there is running bootleg trips for $200 and he just took my client. I'm surprised some of those guys, and maybe they do, and you guys keep these things quiet or something, but that some of these own guys don't police that in like a marina situation when they're not only detracting from their pockets, but really from the safety and just the integrity of the whole game. Because a guy like like the guy you mentioned is putting a drift sock, and not that can't happen to anyone, but it sounds like he was
Right.
more frequent with that than maybe me or somebody else.
Yeah. You're right about that. As far as when our complaints or tips come in, it's usually from licensed charter captains for the most part. At least my way, if out of Geneva area, Ashtabula, when I get a tip on unlicensed guide, it's from another charter captain. Now there is certain areas when you get closer to the PA Conneaut line or Ohio line, that is such a tight knit group up there. They're all fishermen. You don't get any complaints out of there. Stuff's going on, but they will not squeal on each other. They'll keep it to themselves, and because they're all doing it. So, there's certain areas around the lake.
Honor among thieves, I guess.
Absolutely.
I guess if we're all robbing a bank, I mean, who's gonna yeah. Any rate, that makes me think of a story that I can tell on the podcast for another day, but this is your day to shine. So, I can remember, like the one case, I don't want to like jump your thing, but I remember down in Catawba watching people with my own eyes taking coolers of frozen walleyes and throwing them in the lake and then calling guys, and they were turning like bats out of hell, and there was boat after boat. Do you remember that case? I don't.
Yeah.
How many years? What year was that?
That was
7, 8 years ago. 10 years ago.
That was 2017. I got some notes here that I can't keep all these things straight, but yeah, that was 2017, and that was out of Catawba State Park, and that was all Wisconsin. There, we had not to rag on Wisconsin. We'll talk about other states too, but at that time, all those guys were from Wisconsin, and when we first started working these double trippers, is what we call them. When they go out in the morning, they get their limit. They go out again later in the day, they get another limit. It took a little bit to figure out exactly how to do it, and what, sometimes mistakes are made. And in that particular situation, we were doing surveillance and we knew it was going on, but one of the boats did not go back to the same place as all the other boats. And we made contact with them, and we got them for double limits, but they knew the other guys. And so then the phone started going off, and then fish start getting, like you said, dumped. And I think we took, pretty sure it's about 500 pounds of filleted fish from those guys, but they had cut their fish fillets have to remain whole. Well, they had chunked them up into little pieces. So
and that's for accounting purposes, right? That's where you can
exactly
adequately say there was 1, 2, 3, whatever.
Right. So one walleye is 2 pieces of meat, and they need to be frozen in a manner in which they can be counted. So these guys had them, frozen blocks, little pieces. There's no way to quantify it. So a few of those guys, the ones that were the first ones in, they got tickets for double limits. But then they started telling their buddies, and then they started dumping fish, and so some of the guys only got tickets for the chunked fish. So but that was a lesson learned that if you got and we just had this happen recently. If you got 2 or 3 boats out and they're from the same state, you really want to be careful making contacts, because they might, you contact the first one, you might lose the second 2, and it's a cat and mouse for sure.
It's like taking down the mafia. You have to do a coordinated strike.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And funny thing on that deal is I had clients that were staying in the proximity of where that all went down. And so I don't know where the picture actually came from, but I got a cell phone picture of one of those bathtubs that was full. I mean, and the thing that backing out of this is like, I understand that you can't apply common sense to this, but these fishing places, cabins, whatever, I'm sure I'm going to get some hate mail on this, but generally speaking, they're not something that most guys' wives want to go to. How about that? Is that the nice, polite way of saying it? I don't think these tubs, because I don't think they've been, I know they don't get cleaned every week. How about that? And these guys filled a tub full of nothing but fillets. It was like a tub of walleyes, like a bathtub full with ice barely in it, like spoiling, nasty, dirty, like just like, ugh. I'm like, I guess that's just the gluttony on overload or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Matt and I have been in a tremendous amount of these hotels and VRBOs and motels, and it's even on the islands. Some of them I go in on a regular basis, unfortunately, and there's some that are nice, and most of them are not. And I think these guys come out here and they want to find a place to sleep for $30 a person or something. So it's definitely not the best.
So give me a little more, because this one didn't end up well, right? Depending on what side of the block you're on.
Right.
So there was like, how many guys ended up being kind of included in this? And I'm sure there was many that were but weren't.
Yeah,
or should have been, I should say.
25 guys got ticketed. We had boats coming in with empty coolers full of fish slime. They'd already caught their limit in the morning. Obviously some people got away. It was such a big group. We had people coming from all over to help. I'm not even sure if everybody got contacted. It was a mess. And at the time that this took place, and like I said, this was 2017, if people chunked their fish, the court would let them pay a waiver, and we could not make them appear to get an appropriate penalty. So part of the problem with that is that a lot of those guys only paid, like, I don't know, whatever it was, $120 or something. And there was nothing we could do about it. It was what it was. It was almost like they got caught for no fishing license. So it was an unfortunate thing. And there was a fair bit of bad feedback on that. But, part of our job as law enforcement is we catch them and we put them into court, and, we can't control what the fines are or what the courts do with it. So now moving forward, as a result of some of that bad feedback, those tickets are now mandatory appearance. And Ottawa County is one of our best courts. They take this stuff very seriously. This is the walleye capital of the world, and there's a tremendous amount of the economy is based on walleye fishing. So, they want people to come here, but they also want the resource to be here for years to come.
That one, I bring that one up because, again, I wasn't involved, but indirectly. I'm going to say that they were also involved in law enforcement in their day jobs. And here's the deal. So obviously I do fishing media and have for a long time. We do education, we do all kinds of different stuff. And I get contacted all the time by things. Hey, what does Ross think about this? By national outlets and things. And that group went to a writer that wrote a thing about, hey, this is basically, his thing was, this is a gross neglect of the resource. That wasn't like a fishery specific, or it wasn't a 1, 2, 3 on the case. As a matter of fact, I think the thing was still pending, so he couldn't. But it was just like, hey, these guys got caught, like you said, in the picture, I think, of the tub of walleyes ended up in the paper. And I don't know if I've ever said this publicly. They contacted me and started getting shitty. I'm not going to tell you how that ended working for them or what I ended up doing with that. But the person that they called in the media, the media company, records all of the calls. And so then I think that's a part of the reason that they ended up, these people, some of them lost their jobs. I mean, they threatened multiple people because of after they were busted, like, you better not, you better, and they were just assholes, plain and simple. I mean, I don't think I'm glad that they got what they got, because again, this wasn't a 51 perch thing on a 50 fish limit. This was, and so people understand about these guys and why I think you need to give these guys in law enforcement a leash. I have seen some what I'm going to call bad game wardens in my time. Fortunately, I think we don't really have that around us. You're going to have that with anything, just like regular police officers. This is what it is, guys. But before you guys are giving these guys hard shit at the boat ramp or whatever, again, I can't speak for everybody, but like these guys here on this deal, I remember, because again, I just know a lot of people. I had people around just by chance. Clients were staying at a place. These guys rented another cabin that they weren't even staying at in a different part of town. And they were switching vehicles. Like, hey, I've got Matt's truck, and today we're going to borrow Ross's boat. And they were switching clothes. Like, this is a blatant neglect. I mean, that's just, again, I'm not like a tree hugger or a cross your T guy, but I just want to throat punch these fuckers. I mean, because I think the thing that kind of pisses me off is a lot of other anglers, and that's kind of part of like what I'm saying here is I'm not here to preach to anybody that's listening to this. This is fun. We're talking about some dirt bags. But at the same point, I think other fishermen should be a little more upset when this is going on also. Because, there's unfortunately, you probably don't want me saying this, but it's true. For every guy that gets caught, there's probably 50 that don't. And that's a reality of this. And you do that to just slow it up. It's just like if we don't put a cop in the median on the highway, everybody's going to drive 120 by the end of the summer. It just is what it is. And I wish fishermen a little bit would sometimes, if nothing else, for the court of public opinion when someone tells, because I've had people, tell me like, hey, my buddy knows this guy, he's keeping, 50 walleyes. And they're like, ha, ha, ha. Like, you need to also then kind of step up and be like, hey, dude, come on. Like, if you're a parent talking about kids, like, I mean, is this really what you're going to like think is cool? But I don't know. That's my soapbox for the minute. And I wish more people thought that way.
Yeah, a lot of our cases are made on people calling in, but other times we'll just set up shop. We'll just say, okay, we're going to work this spot on this day, and whoever gets caught gets caught. And I went back preparing for this. I went back through our cases, and I think we started doing this type of work with these double trippers back. I think the first big one was in 2007. So it's been a while now. But on that day, we had a bunch of us. We worked Wild Wings and we worked Turtle Creek. We worked the mouth of both of those, and we wrote 33 people for double tripping that day, and 30 of them were non-residents. And so, not that some people from Ohio don't do it, but I think the people that come here from out of state, they're here for a week, and they intend to take fish home for every day they're here. And sometimes the fish don't bite. A lot of days it's too windy to fish. And so they think if I'm here for 7 days, 6 times 7 is 42, and I'm taking home 42, whether I catch 12 one day and 0 the next, or however they do it, then, that's what they're going to do. And I don't know, maybe we bring it upon ourselves for not having any possession limit at all. I don't know that there's anywhere in the state or anywhere in the country that you can go fish and bring home however many days you were there. So, but
yeah. Well, we're not going to change any laws today, but I would agree. And I think, honestly, people that are in the fishing business, I think that they would be supportive of that, to be honest with you. I don't think they would get as, I've been asked that privately by different organizations. I'll say, just leave it at that. And I said, I think that if you were to talk to the charter community, I don't think there'd be much kickback, honestly, on there.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, we aren't going to change any laws today, but I've always thought to myself, if a lot of people come for a week, if they were allowed to bring back 4 or 5 days possession limit, is that enough? I mean, you can't do it anywhere else.
I don't know what these people, when they got 2 chest freezers that you could put dead bodies in. I don't know what they're. I mean, I don't know. I keep fish like twice a year, and we eat them all the time. I don't know what they're doing, but well, I do know what some of them are doing, because we've also seen those things in the news that don't directly relate to you. But the guy from Wisconsin that was selling them in Chicago, did you see that one?
I did not see that.
You have to Google that one. It made national news, but he finally got turned in because he fished his neighbor's pond out that his kids were bluegill fishing on. Literally went in and just wiped them all out. And so finally his neighbor turned him in, and they went in there, and he was just angry about it. Like he made no qualms of, this is what I do, get off my property kind of thing. Like, you got no right. But But anyway, so I was just thinking as you said this, I'm like, there has to be a story that kind of makes you give yourself a little grin here because you just lucked into one. Was there something you just like fell into your lap? Like, and I think like sometimes criminals like they just have bad luck. Like the bank robber, there was that guy who robbed banks for like 20 some years, and they finally found him because his wallet fell out of his pocket in the sidewalk. Like, you got something like that?
There is one. There's a really
Matt,
good one.
Matt
Actually,
brought it, no
yeah,
hesitation.
yeah, I got one for you. So I think this is going to be back in 2010. I got Burry's notes here, but again, this is happened up on the island, it'd be South Bass Island, and we were getting some complaints throughout the spring about walleye double trips and stuff like that. And we couldn't get a way to get up there, but we finally were able to secure a location, and so we booked a few days and we went up and conducted surveillance. So of course we get in this campground area, and there was only 3 other boats there, and there were no walleye guys. It turned out to be bass fishermen. It was like, oh man, we went up there to work walleye guys. And now we got onto these 3 bass guys, and we didn't think anything of it. So we worked the ramps the first couple of days, didn't make anything for the walleye guys, but we'd come back to the campground area, and these guys would the first trip they brought in some big smallmouth, their limits. And of course it's 5 at this time. It's before May 1st. And still didn't think anything of it. They were from down in Georgia and I believe Alabama.
Oh, this is the Georgia one.
Yes.
What year is this?
2010.
I think that was 2010. Is that what you had? Yeah, I think that was. It's been so long ago.
Oh yeah, I've always wanted to hear this. You all better listen up right now. If you're on the treadmill somewhere, you better slow down the pace.
This one maybe ESPN, baby.
Yeah.
But like I said, we were surprised that got 3 bass boats going out keeping the bass. Guys, there was guys up there that were fishing bass, but they let them go. But these guys were bringing them back, and they brought the first trip back, and didn't think anything of it. Talked to them, and nice enough guys. And about 2 hours later, they went back out fishing. So I was like, well, maybe they're just going to go out and catch release. So we kind of waited back, did our surveillance again when they came back in, and lo and behold, they had their second limit of bass, all 3 boats. And they weren't running very far. They're running from north side of South Bass Island, just to the east there a little bit. And we could actually see them from shore. So we did some more surveillance. And after the second trip, when they came in and cleaned the fish, we was like, it's still early. It's about 2:00 in the afternoon. Yeah, they decided to go back out for a third trip that day.
Eating smallmouth. Interesting.
Eating smallmouth. It's a funny you say that because we talked to them about that, and they said walleye are scum, slimy. They're worse than northerns. Smallmouth bass are the best eating fish out there. And of course, they were bringing in the big females. These fish were 5, 6, 7 pounders, so there's a lot of meat on them. And they come up. They've been coming up for years, they said. So you can imagine how many times they were doing this. But so that was the first day. The first day they made 3 trips, and so obviously we changed our focus from walleye to smallmouth bass enforcement now. And this went on for 2 more days, making 3 trips a day, and then we decided to obviously call our supervisor, get a hold of the prosecutor. And that I believe was Ottawa County at the time. I don't work over there all the time. That's Burry's location. But so they decided with our administration that when the takedown did occur, that we were going to start seizing some boats, seizing basically everything that these guys had, and not make an example out of it. But what they were doing is, just raping the resource.
Yeah, so let me stop you there for a second because I'm curious on these things. So, at what point do you feel? Because somebody listening to this, I'm sure some comments will be like, "Well, after the second or the third time, why did we need to go to day 2 or whatever?" Like, is that what is the point? Do you feel that you have to have before you're like, "We're not going to let these guys eat any more 5 pounders"? Like,
right?
Is it like because as a second day that it's just that's malicious now, or?
Yeah, that's a good point because we did bring that up with administration, and that's why they said talk to the prosecutor. The prosecutor made that determination at that point after the second day of the gross overbags, and they said on the third day, you guys are going to take them down. Cause I think they were going to be there a total of 5 days. We caught them on the first day, and they said, go to 3 days and call it quits, because it's, it's a bad reputation, obviously. And at that point they decided, to call it right there on the third day. And that, like I said, that came down to the prosecutor's office. Can you take them on the first day or second day? Yeah. And there was a lot of variables with that case, why the prosecutor wanted to wait 3 days, but with the amount of fish that they harvested, that they decided to take the boats, which I think was, put pretty good example for future cases up on the islands.
Yeah, that's an expensive. He could have went to Long John Silver's a little cheaper.
Yeah, exactly. I will admit though, smallmouth bass are good eating. I know people laugh at me for saying that, but I grew up in Minnesota. I had to get that out there. I'm a hybrid, yes, but I've been here 27 years, and Barry just shakes his head. But smallmouth bass are good to eat.
I don't care if it tastes like a lobster. You put them back in the water.
Well, and I think, again, this is probably not the podcast to get into to that judgmental of things, but when you talk to the fisheries guys, aside from quantity available out there, the bass, just the growth cycle is so much different or slower. Correct. So when you're on beds, like, so people that are listening to this that are like, well, what's the difference? A fish is a fish, and yes, you're not wrong. But when smallmouth are on the beds out here and you get into certain areas, it's like bluegill fishing in a pond.
Yep.
And you can wipe out just large numbers of the biggest, it's just like I always say, like, there's a lot of people, but I want the Navy SEALs. And a person is not a person necessarily if we're going to war. And those big breeding, just the gene pool on those smallmouth, again, not that it makes it any different, but it kind of does.
It can definitely hurt the population doing what they were doing. It was one small area. I mean, they pretty well wiped that area out. It definitely is not good.
When we were watching them from shore, almost every cast they would hook a fish. Almost every cast, and they, like I said, they were all the big breeders on the beds. It was insane.
So I guess that was lucky for someone, but not for somebody else, huh? 3 boats. Correct. Those were the Georgia boys, huh?
Yeah, the Georgia boys. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. So what's another memorable one? Because I mean, well, how many people do you think you get in a year? Like, how many?
Like good, really good cases, or
and I'm not talking to, like, you wrote somebody because they were an asshole and they were, had 17 walleyes instead of 12. Like, I mean, that's obviously, again, it's, if you're speeding and you're 5 over, is it any different than when you're 20 over? I mean, no, but yes, right? Like, technically, it's a reckless off or something, but kind of same thing with this, where it's like decent ones where you're like, this is a no-brainer. This is shut down.
Greg, you're probably right on that one.
Well, it just varies by the year. It's like this year the weather has been so bad. We've had very few days to work it, but I will say I can only think of one time that we went after double trippers this year and we didn't make at least one boat. So I don't know how to quantify it, but pretty much every time we do it, we can come up with at least one. And but I guess I'll say that if we did this back when we first started working this, we'd have so many that we wouldn't even be able to contact everybody. Some of them would get away. So I think we have chipped away at it, and a lot of these guys are losing their fishing license for a year when they get caught, and that definitely helps. Losing boats, that definitely helps. I don't think we're going to see anybody cheating in walleye tournaments anymore unless they want to lose their boats. So those things make news.
You know what? I thought the same thing, but a couple events later, here we are. It's just I think some of these guys, I've had people on my boat. I probably don't have the right crowd to say this out loud, but I truthfully haven't had it in a number of years, and I don't know if that's just because so many of the same people fish with me. But I could say back 10 plus years ago, I would get 1 or 2 guys a year that were dead serious about, like, hey man, I'll give you $100 if we can stash some of these in like your battery compartment, or like we can put one of these in the cowling. And I'm like, are you hearing what you're saying? Like you're going to give me $100 to keep a couple fish. I'm like, you can go to Kroger's and they're already clean for 30. Like if this is about like fish, I think there's some people that are just and a lot of them, believe it or not, or in my experience, are not even the young kids that we all give a hard time to, or millennials or whatever. It's generally the older crowd that they can't. This is like first person eyes seeing it. Like they can't stand watching fish get released. There's certain times a year when we're jig fishing or something, and the guy's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, we have your limit, and it's 8:30 in the morning. So, I know you drove from Timbuktu. We can safely, we got the live well. We can safely release these if we get one deep hooked. We got, oh, I can't sit here and watch this. I mean, take me in if this is what we're going to do." And it's kind of like, makes me think of Meatball. Oh, we're going to keep going.
Yeah.
Like, does anybody just not enjoy, I don't know. Again, I'm really not trying to be on a soapbox, and I hope people get to that point where I am with it mentally, that I enjoy fishing and being out there, and it's not about how many sandwiches I have. I don't know, but
I don't even know if it's about how many sandwiches they have. I think it's more about social media. I think, if you can, post a picture on Facebook or Snapchat and brag about you caught this many, or, they lay them out, there might be 2 or 3 boats worth of people and they lay out 70 walleye on the table and send it to their friends and everybody compliments them. I mean, I think a lot of it's ego. I really do. I mean, even on a different subject, the deer poaching, if they couldn't put that picture on Facebook, I don't think half of them would do it. And
yeah,
another thing that you said earlier was fish sales. That motivates some of these people as well. We've had a lot of people. We've had, we sometimes we target people that we know are selling fish, and they'll go out and take too many and overbag, keep short fish, and they're doing it because they're making money on them. If they can sell a walleye for $10 a piece, think how fast you can catch them. If you don't care about the limit and you're not getting caught, you can make quite a bit of money. So
clout chasing is you're 100% right. And have you ever caught anybody? Because it's just, again, on my stuff, or when people will share something and they'll be like, "Hey, look at this dipshit," and they'll have a Facebook thing, and it'll be like, it'll be 2 guys admitting that they kept 20 or whatever the number is over, and then they physically have them laying there. Have you ever been able to get anybody because of that? Because
oh yeah,
that was a quick head shake. You guys just listening to this on Spotify or something. That was a quick head shake if you're watching YouTube right now.
If you're breaking the law and you're Snapchatting it, or you're putting it on Facebook or any other social media, you're asking for trouble. I mean, but that's why they do it. Nobody does these things and then keeps quiet. The whole point is to brag to your buddies about what you did, and that's how they end up getting caught. So I had a call on the way to the office today, and I'm not going to say what it was about, but this person has done something shockingly bad, and I was told to get on Facebook, and I got on there, and there it is. I mean, it's unbelievable. And so, there's ways to investigate that, and
People
their
that are
time is
listening to
coming.
this and either doubt this or wonder, just think about this. I'm going to throw guys under the bus. There are guys that go on Facebook and brag about a girl that they're dating and put it on Facebook when they're married. Like
Yeah,
someone's
there
not
you
going
go.
to see this, or one. You can have 900 of your buddies that think that's awesome. You only need one that doesn't, or one twice. Like how retarded
Yep.
are you? Like, this is the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life. The same thing I'm going to put up there because, oh, nobody will see this. I've
Yeah.
only had these friends. Like, okay.
Yep.
So give me another good big one case. I like these big ones, like that, the bass thing. I wondered about that one because I had heard,
We had we had a guy that was selling fish. Since we were talking about selling fish, he was selling fish quite a bit, and we knew about it, and we did a lot of surveillance. And this is one where we kind of let it go a little bit. And you asked earlier, why do you let things go? Well, some of these guys are, if we can do surveillance and we can build a case, do you want me to write the guy a ticket for $150, or do you want me to let him go and actually have an impact on it? A lot of these guys have priors. The prior arrests, they've been ticketed before. There's several people in the area which I work who have as many as 15 tickets apiece where they've been ticketed that many times. There's several people that have been revoked
I
multiple
was going to say,
occasions.
at that point, do we not have a fishing license?
Right, and that doesn't necessarily mean anything either, because if you're going out and taking a double limit, I mean, so what?
They're rolling the dice no matter what. So a fishing
Right.
license is,
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. We had a guy in Lorain County, and we did some surveillance for a good period of time, and we did some search warrants, and people put all kinds of stupid things on their phone, and sometimes we get a search warrant, take people's phones. Sometimes we get search warrants for the houses or vehicles. This particular guy, we took his truck, we took all 3 of his boats, we took all of his fishing gear, all of it. We had dozens
three.
of
He's
violations.
got 3
on
boats. Was this
Three.
guy just a recreational guy?
Yeah, but he
must have had some cheddar or something here.
well, his other side gig was stealing catalytic converters. So it's
I see where
steal
we're going.
catalytic
I see where
converters
we're
or
going.
sell walleye. Yeah, so we took
Okay.
his truck, we took all his boats, we took all his fishing gear. He lost his license for 3 years, and this, by the time it was done with court, this was sometime last winter, we'll say. Well, by the time July hit, he was back fishing again. He had somehow pieced together another vehicle and another boat. And if you saw these boats, you wouldn't think that it would start or hold water or they'd make it
I
back
was
alive.
wondering if they were just like something that was like something you expect to see coming from Cuba, or
Yeah, yeah, you can pick him out. But anyways, he went out there, and we had some information that he was going fishing again. So we waited for him one night, and we went out there and did some more surveillance with some cameras. And I got a beautiful picture of him holding up a walleye that he had just reeled in. And so he was under a 3-year revocation, and he was on probation. Went back into court. Now he's got 5 more years on top of that. So is he going to stop? I don't know. But that's the kind of thing we deal with.
Here's a question from a guy that doesn't know the laws pertaining to convictions, I guess you could say, right? Like, I know we keep 6 walleyes or whatever, but so when you get somebody for 15 violations or all of these things, and that guy steals a Cadillac converter, are those 2 totally separate things, or does that kind of hurt his situation when he's sitting in front of the judge? Because we don't have a fish judge, right? Like, going to court's going to court. So do some of these non-fishing violations help at all? Or if this guy does have other criminal stuff, does that help you get him for more with a fishing violation then? Does that make sense?
It usually does, because if you've got somebody that has absolutely no history and all they did was take too many fish or shoot too many deer or whatever, they usually will take that into account. But some of these people are, they have a bad history of all kinds of stuff. And so those are the ones that they may get a stiffer penalty. They may end up in jail. So,
Yeah.
So what if these guys are
Definitely
selling
makes
the
a difference.
fish? Are they selling them to like individuals or trying to sell them to restaurants or something? Or
both.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, because see, the restaurant one would be the one that would scare me. Because if Little Ricky or whatever your guy is there, that we're not naming names today, people, but I'm going to call him Little Ricky. If Little Ricky's selling these things to like Bob's Inn, and now I go in there and eat them, and he left them in a cooler for 6,000 hours. I mean, that's the reason we can't do this. Again, I'm not a stickler for rules, but you go in and you get food poisoning because he was like, well, I'm not getting ice. I'm getting $10 no matter what. And
you wish they were in a cooler. You wish they were in a cooler.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you. They were in a dog food bag in the front of the boat. That's where the fish were. A dog food bag stuffed in the front of the boat. There was no ice. Ice would take away from profit. You're trying to make money. You can't afford to put ice.
Well, and that's kind of I assumed that was something that could be going down.
Yeah, and I think Matt, I think you went over to one of the restaurants where and of course we're not naming restaurants, but was that a 5-star restaurant that we were dealing with, or 4-star? You were over there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not joking.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So from Lake Erie to a dog food bag to your plate at a 5-star, 4-star restaurant.
Right.
Do you remember what they were charging for those walleye dinners?
I can't. Shoot, what was that?
A lot more than what they were paying.
Yeah. Was it $15? I can't, somewhere around in there. I don't.
Huh. Well, so what about, here's one that I always had, because as a kid growing up in Toledo, I fished the Maumee River, when I was not old enough to drive. Like my grandpa used to drop me off in there. And the shit that I saw in that river, I mean, guns getting pulled on guys. We called it the Maumee elbow, where they're wet elbow and all them fish, right?
Mhm.
Netting them
Yep.
underwater and all that good stuff. People that are listening to this, you got to realize a lot of them aren't even from Ohio that are listening. Fortunately, we've got a pretty broad crowd. And so we've got a river called the Maumee on the western end of Lake Erie, and it's very shallow up where the fish actually are spawning. Freighters and stuff come in near the mouth of the lake there in downtown Toledo. Basically, the Maumee where you're fishing is basically most times waist to knee deep, and so these fish are in a bottleneck. You could pretty much walk across the river, and I don't know if we'd have to probably talk to our fisheries boys, but millions of walleyes go in there, and it becomes pretty much a snagathon. Flossing is a term that's used now to
Yep.
somewhat legally, you guys, that's another video you can look up. But I'm interested to hear, and even the Sandusky River, that's another big one. I didn't
Yeah.
partake in that much. It's the same situation. Shameless plug, if you guys are listening to this, we did a thing with our fisheries guys there with electroshock fishing. That was kind of a neat little thing if you want to check out that video. But give me something on the Maumee and the Sandusky, because I have personally witnessed, when I say hundreds of people getting violations, it is no exaggeration. I've watched people climb out, go downtown Maumee, pay their fine, come back, get in the river, and get caught again, literally. And it's almost like a joke, like all the guys that are around, because it's elbow to elbow fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Like set that up enough for you.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And when I was referring to people with 15 prior tickets, a lot of that is in Fremont, and almost all of the ones in Fremont that are repeat offenders are all selling the fish. There's certain areas, for some reason, there's a market for that, and so when they're motivated to do that, if they can go down there and um, if they can catch 10, 12 fish in a day, it's $100 a day, do that 7 days a week and make some money. So, but there's, especially during COVID, when COVID started, we had an order, of course, not to make contact unless we really needed to. So there's a little bit of time there where we weren't able to do a lot other than surveillance and respond to emergencies and things. We weren't just going down and writing snagging tickets. Well, it doesn't take long. If they don't see a marked truck around, they know. I mean, these people have scouts. They drive around. They will not even go down to the river if they see a marked vehicle. So they know where we hide. So we have to change up our hiding places. But when COVID happened, they got an idea that we weren't down there, and so things started to fester. And it got to the point where our main characters that did really bad stuff, they got so brazen to where they were coming out with double limits, walking right out with double limits. And so when we finally got the green light to go down there and to get these guys, we had it was unbelievable.
You blistered them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All of a sudden the gates were locked on them and they didn't know it, right?
Yeah, I mean, they had so many fish that they couldn't carry them all out at the same time. It was like you said, there's shallow areas where the fish are, and they just went in there and just ripped them out of there. And I don't remember how many tickets we wrote, but they all lost their fishing license again. I'm pretty sure the one guy didn't have a fishing license at the time. He was still under revocation from a previous one, but a lot of these guys, they're pretty slow learners. So. Yeah, I mean,
I can remember. I so should not say this, which makes it amazing. You remember I had a TV show in Toledo on through Buckeye Cable for almost a decade, and the upper brass there, that was like a sports channel thing for you guys listening that don't know, and we were on a lot because we'd be put on either side of a baseball game or something, or a rain delay or whatever. And the upper brass there were, let's just say that they have never been in a pair of waders or in a boat in their life, and they're like, we need to go down to the Maumee River and we're shooting a show. And I was like, nope, not doing it. And they're like, you have to do it. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. And I just remember going down there with them to shoot like some voiceover or something. We were down there, and people, let's just say the vulgarity even made me cringe a little bit. And I can just remember these hoity-toity people were like, oh my God. And I'm like, this is all snagging. And even the funny part of that thing is when you have someone that is not involved at all that now sees this, and like this lady was like, why are they even allowed to do this then? And I'm like, almost a good question. I mean, I'm not about taking away liberties, but there does become a certain point of like, there's so many people that are just purposely, you know, ill intent. How about that?
Yeah, it has evolved over the years. When you and I were down there fishing, back in the late '90s, we were using lead heads, and then eventually, they came around with the floating jig heads, and then it's evolved quite a bit. So there is a lot of legal fish taken down there now, especially if people are trying to do it right. It's certainly
There's
you
windows.
know
My opinion is even back then there was windows where those fish are biting. But again,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of like a kid at prom. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to get graphic here, mom, but there's certain things that are on their minds, and when that's all they're thinking about. Cheesecake and cheeseburgers ain't even on the menu right now, mom. You know what I'm saying? And I think there's that window, and then it's almost like, and then the males will bite, right? And then all of a sudden when the white bass start going, it's like most of the walleyes are running out there, and you can almost predict. I bet you guys could almost predict when you're going to write the most amount of tickets by water level and time of year.
Absolutely, and I will agree that there's windows, and I don't want to paint everybody in a bad light that goes down to the rivers, because most of those people are trying to do it correctly, but there are so many people down there that if 1 out of 10 is doing it wrong, then there's 50 people down there at a time doing it wrong. I mean, it's unbelievable, but it is, fish don't bite every day, and you got guys coming in from out of town, and yeah, they might not be biting, but if you want to snag them, I mean, you can certainly do it. And there are people that are gonna do that. So
So,
definitely, it's fun to work. It's interesting.
I imagine there's no dull moments there. You ever
If the
get
fish
anybody
are
like
in,
for like fighting people? Like, I mean, because I've seen a lot of like physical fights, like guys getting the shit kicked out of each other down there. Do you ever have to break some of that up, or you just let it go?
no, we they police their own down there. You cross somebody's line, and you get they get yelled at or whatever. There's a lot of it gets pretty crazy down there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, to maybe paint this a little better, people listening, is guys are literally, depending on the water levels, anywhere from shin to maybe waist deep, and they are
Mhm.
shoulder to shoulder at times
Yep.
for hundreds of yards on both sides of the river. And you can just
Yep.
imagine as guys cast and they're going in a very snaggy that things might happen bad, whether it's a snag
Mhm.
fish or somebody snags in accidentally to a carp or a channel or something that takes out like 20 lines. And now I
Mhm.
guess I hear guys are using braided line down there, and I'm like, oh my god, because I can't even imagine that, just trying to get one of those out. Because I mean, have you ever been down there in the summertime and seen when and there's just billions of those lures and how it's when the water level's low?
I have not. I don't know if I want to see it.
There's a tree down there near Buttonwood that literally had so much lead in it that a World War II shell could not have the amount of lead that this thing. I mean, there was just thousands of jigs in this tree that was so big and it was wedged in between a couple rocks that like everybody on the planet had lost a couple of jigs in that thing apparently. But
Yeah, it's crazy
anyhow,
down there. My favorite is the person that goes down there and they cast real short. Everybody's casting out as far as they can, and they cast about 20 foot out, and then they always have everybody's line. It's a lot of tangles down there. You either need to find a place where it's not too crowded, or you gotta have a lot of patience.
oh, I'm tapping out of that one. That's the best TV show I never shot in my life. But so have
I
you ever
tapped
had
out a long
anybody
time
that's
ago on that one.
oh have you ever caught anybody of, I don't know how to say this, notoriety, maybe a famous person or a media person or somebody that maybe had some type of influence? Because it seems like sometimes I see these things and sometimes those people don't feel that the laws apply to them. And you see that with like cops all the time. Like, do you know who I am? You can't give me a
Yeah.
speeding ticket. I'm the vice president of the something, something, something. And you're like, oh, okay, here's your ticket.
Hmm.
Never have anybody or any media or anything like sometimes that or
I can't think of anything myself. I'm sure it happens.
Yeah, I
Nothing
can't. I mean,
sticks out.
okay, that's fair enough. But what's the biggest amount do you think as far as like I know I remember hearing like just as I started googling things like restitution, and I don't know what that all means. That's why we got you guys here. But I've seen some like pretty decent sized numbers that people have had to pay. Do you got any cases like that you?
That bass case, I looked that up that Matt was talking about earlier from South Bass Island. Those guys paid $48,000 total in fines and restitution. The gentleman they were talking about earlier that lost his 3 boats, I believe he was at $12,000 restitution. So
Sounds
it
about right,
can
yeah.
get
So
it
honestly,
can get
about 900 people had to lose their catalytic converters to get that paid off. Thank God. Thank you.
Yeah. So
So-
a walleye, the restitution, just so people understand, the restitution for a walleye or a bass or a steelhead, anything like that, it's $50 a fish. So if you're 6 fish over, that's $300. If you're over on perch, those are $20 a piece. So do the math on that stuff. So
now,
most
if you
times,
get to a huge number, does that change, or is that just flat rate?
no, that's
Not,
go ahead, Matt.
no, it's just a flat rate. I mean, it's $20 per fish. I mean, if they have 400 over, that's gonna be $20, for perch for 400.
So where does that money go when you get all these fines or restitution or the boats or any of that stuff? Like, how's that work?
We have a fund. The Division of Wildlife is funded by hunting and fishing license dollars. So we don't receive general tax money. When you go to the gas station, you buy something, we don't get that. Now, if you go to a gun store and you buy a gun, we get a little bit of that. There's different ways that we get a little bit of money, but we're mostly funded by hunting and fishing license dollars. So any of these fines go into that same fund there. So our budget is quite large. So it's a drop in the bucket, so to speak, but it does go back into the fund. So, we can raise more fish and put them back in the lake or whatever we need to do.
I'm gonna judge here, and I don't think I'm gonna land far off topic, but please tell me you have something on ice fishing, because I feel like some of the most low down things I've seen have been ice fishing or some of the crowds. Because I literally have had people unloading my enclosed trailer. As I'm turned with my back, people trying to steal a graph out of my machine 3 feet away when they're parked right there. But I happened to have a guy who was a world bench pressing champion with me that day. Also, not going to tell you how that story ended because I don't want cuffs on me now. But the insanity of the gall of someone to and the guy's parked right there, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like after you get the shit kicked out of you, you can't go. You can't even go home. But anyway, you've got to have a couple. You got an ice story or two?
Yeah. I live in the
I know
Western
we don't get ice a lot, but back in like 13, 14,
Yeah.
14, 15 winters, like we had 9 billion people. I mean, we had, for people that are again not from here, we had like literally some of the parks, they were plowing some of the fields and they were parking people in fields, and there was just when I say thousands of vehicles, I mean there was thousands.
Yeah, I primarily work in the Western Basin. Matt primarily works in the Eastern Basin, so I'll just take this one because he doesn't see
we don't get
ice
much ice
fishing
our way.
over there.
Recovery stories.
Yeah,
There-
right.
When the ice was thick back there in 14 and 15, I mean, there would be 1,000 people out there a day, and it was there was just a lot of stuff going on. And we had people bringing in short fish. We had people hiding fish under they put a false floor in their shanty. We had people filleting fish out on the ice, and bringing in whole fish and filleted fish. People, of course, going out multiple times a day. We'd have especially sometimes around the islands, we went out there and you contact maybe South Bass Island. I'll just say we'll just use that for example. You contact the first shanty and the phones start going off, and people are literally on every machine they can get on, racing to shore, trying to get the hell out of there before we can get them. And I'll never forget the one day we were in a vehicle. It's called an Argo. It was an amphibious machine, and that son of a gun will only get about 15 mile an hour. And I don't
I've heard
know how
about
many,
those.
yeah. And I'm just mashing on the pedal, and these people are just getting away left and right. And that was the last time I was in that thing, because we need to have a 4-wheeler where I can at least keep up with them. But people just bailing out. I mean, we went to the one shanty. It a prominent person on the islands. And again, not saying names, but I believe there was 18 walleye in that shanty. Of course, the limit was 6. They took off, but they had their name on there. We knew who they were, and ticket was issued after an interview.
So,
but,
so how does that work? Me, because like out there, so with these guys, again, a little bit of backstory for people listening to this. On a couple of the islands off of Port Clinton area in the wintertime, there are people that live there year round, or people that go over or whatever, and they have permanent. They look like little wooden houses that they leave out, and you're required to have your name on anything that's left overnight, regardless of what it is, even if it's a pop up. But there are people that get kind of crazy with these, and they make they're artistic even. So,
yes.
Are you saying that I could technically? I was just thinking about this. This is
No, you can't.
Wonder me coming up. So I can put like 9 walleyes in one of these guys' shanties and be like, I don't know, that guy over there. You should go check him.
Good.
Because some of those guys, I got a lot of friends, that are in that neck of the woods, and honestly, most of them I know couldn't even catch 18 walleyes. We're gonna find out who listens to this podcast now. Most of my buddies over there couldn't even catch 18 walleyes, even if you handed a half of them to them. But
another one popped into mind is again doing surveillance. Saw a guy put some walleye under the seat of his snowmobile. So people were definitely getting creative through all that. But
that's a mess.
Some of those people, yeah, they were undersized, so they fit in there nicely. But I mean, how bad do you need a fish to put it under your seat? I mean, it seems kind of crazy to me. But
so ice fishing, I know we don't have nearly the amount of time. Like if you have to think back to like 2003 was a big one. I don't know, were you guys even around then?
My first year.
14, 15 were big years. As far as winter, I mean, there was an insane amount of people out there. There had to be just because it was just insane. That was insane. The amount of people just alone were insane. But
and the fish were huge.
Yeah, that was I remember hearing one. I also did, like I said, a little research, did a little Google in here. It's amazing what you can find in Google. Wasn't there a Tennessee one?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that a big one?
Yeah, we had. It was kind of interesting. We had some complaints about some guys going out again, double tripping, what we call double tripping, and we did some surveillance and had a few phone calls on it, and so we had a plan in place. We were gonna hit them in the morning, and I don't mean physically. I mean go issue tickets and seize fish. And so when we went to the location in the morning, they were gone. And so one guy was from Florida. He was actually still there, but the guy from Tennessee was gone, and he had taken at least half the fish, or the majority of the fish maybe. And so in us game wardens, we know each other even in other states. So I was talking to a gentleman from well, I'm not going to say where because we got a case going, but I talk to people from all over the country. So it's not a problem to pick up a phone and find somebody that'll help you. So when somebody calls Ohio and they need help with a case, we love helping them and they love helping us. So in this particular circumstance, the guy from Tennessee, I got a hold of him. He was waiting for this guy. He was literally parked down the road. So when the guy pulled in his driveway, that they got him. And this was another instance where the fish are chunked. They were block freezing them. They actually backdated fish. So they were putting dates. Now we don't require dates on the bags, but in order to be extra sneaky, they were putting dates on the bags for dates that they weren't even there. We
smart criminal.
Oh yeah, little smarter than most. Little smarter. Still got caught though. When you have your cell phone on you, it tracks where you're at, and so it's not real hard for somebody in law enforcement to go back through some cell phone records and with a warrant and figure out where somebody's at. So when you have all these fish dated for days that you were in Tennessee and you claim you're in Ohio, it doesn't work out real well. So those guys I don't remember exactly what they got, but they lost their fishing license, I believe, for 3 years, and they got a hefty fine. We took a lot of fish from those guys, and to our knowledge, they have not been back up here. So it was an interesting case with the
They're
fact
trying their game elsewhere.
exactly. Probably, hopefully they stayed down there. So I don't know.
Well, I know we could tell these forever, but Matt, I feel like you have one more good one in you before we get off the treadmill or go
I might
fishing
be
or
able to come
whatever
up
we're
with
doing.
something,
Maybe
one
people are
more for
almost
you.
at the ramp now.
Yeah. So you kind of hit on the head a little bit earlier when you talked about this is another double trip case. Guys changing clothes, possibly changing ramps, and that's exactly what happened. So we decided, again, we kind of got a little lucky on this one. We decided to do a project. It was over 4th of July weekend over in Ashtabula County, and again, we did our surveillance, and Burry was in a particular marina, and we were in several other marinas, and he documented. How many boats did you document that morning, Brian?
Oh, I feel like it was like 200 or something. But the interesting thing about it
In
is
Ashtabula?
Yeah.
oh yeah.
So back up here, so I don't, because if I'm maybe getting lost, I think everybody else might be too. When you say you were documenting those, were you just like saying who's in this marina so we know who was here to start? Is that?
So maybe we'll do surveillance a certain spot, and so I'm sitting there watching or taking pictures or taking video or whatever needs done, and every boat that goes past me is documented.
Well, yeah, these
And
are people that were actually going out.
Yeah,
they're on the water. They're on the water. Yeah.
Okay, I
So,
got you.
but the thing that was interesting about this is we said, okay, we're going to get there at 7 in the morning because there's no way anybody's coming in at 7 in the morning. So we get there at 7 in the morning and we're getting in position, and here comes these two boats, and it was just, if we were 5 minutes later, we would have missed them. So they were the first ones in that day.
Yep.
It's 7 a.m. coming back in.
I think
Coming
it was
back
like
in.
7:02
Yep.
because we were getting there at 7.
Yep.
So any of you guys want to see some fast fishing in Ashtabula area? We've got, I think, 3 or 4 summer videos up of them doing some lead core and wire fishing. Check that out. Shameless plug again. But so coming in at 7. So I feel like this one's going to get good.
It does. So a little side note to that, one of the other wildlife officers that works the county, he actually contacted those guys the night before at Geneva Marina. They were cleaning fish in the back of the truck and just did a casual conversation. There's no violations that he knew of at that time, but that was, so we knew they were there. But Brian did a good documentation that morning. What was kind of funny about this, which turned out kind of hilarious a little bit later on, but of course I can't remember exactly the boats, but I think two of the boats were brand new Lunds, and I think the other one might have been a Crestliner. The funny story is, though, they were all getting pulled by, all aluminum, especially over my way, because it gets pretty rough over on the east side. They were all getting pulled by white crew cab. They all worked for the oil and gas company down there, so they're getting pulled by white crew cab pickup trucks. 3 of them, all white, all identical. And that comes into play where I was sitting about 5 o'clock when I was over in Ashtabula at a different ramp. And those same 3 trucks pulled down the hill where I was at the ramp that I was at. So now we have them documented in the morning. We didn't know how many fish they had for sure, but we knew they were out, and we knew what time they came back in, and then they went back out at 5 o'clock that evening at the ramp that I was. So now you can imagine how many hours we already spent there. So Brian comes over from over west. So we got that. We've been there since about 7 o'clock, and now it's 5 o'clock, and these guys are just leaving the ramp to go back out fishing. So at this time we did have a boat on the water, and we did some more surveillance with that boat and watched these guys catch some more fish. Eventually these guys rolled back in about 8:30. And at that time I contacted them at the boat launch, and again they had their second limit of fish that day. Talking with them, did a little interview. They did admit, and actually Brian with his notes and pictures because they of course denied it right away. But with the notes and pictures I had, it was, they finally confessed what they did. And one of the interesting things with one of the individuals on on one of those boats is he was a judge from down in West Virginia. Yeah. So he has some very good questions about our authority. And, I gave him the sections that of our wildlife officer inspection rights and their authority to, look for game and wild parts thereof. But, and he was fine with it, but it was, it was a very interesting. I've never had that happen before. I actually had a judge where I contacted who was in violation. So obviously we had a solid case because he admitted to what he did. And he actually, at the end, he took me back and gave us the fish from the morning too, where they were staying in a hotel in the local area. So they gave those fish up also. And
I think we charged them for the day before that as well.
That is correct. So again, talking like Burry with the backdating of dates, they did have some fish that were backdated in the hotel, which we knew. We contacted the hotel and asked them how many days they were there. So we verified the fish that they caught, and then the fish that they had for that day. They were over that day. They're 6 over, and I think we had them for 2 days prior also for the same violations. So that was
the judge got judged.
The judge got judged. Yeah.
I would think. I'm sorry. I think down your neck of the woods, Matt. I think that fishing when it's on is so good.
It is. Yeah.
I would think that there would just be way more opportunities. Down our way. The windows or daylight hours are not generally. I would just think it would be way easier that you could have way more double tripping down there.
It is, but one thing that the guys are doing here, they're going a lot further. A lot of the guys are going 10, 12, 15 miles offshore. And I think they'd rather try to maybe come in heavy, we call it, versus going out a second trip. Because, obviously going out that far, you're wasting time, you're wasting gas and money. So we see it. We do get guys that'll try to come in heavy. What I mean by heavy is they'll come in with extra fish, either hidden in places on the boat or just in the cooler itself. And I'm not talking heavy like 1 or 2 fish over. I'm talking heavy 10 to 15 fish over. So, but they will take the chances.
What ballpark percentage do you think is guides, or I don't know what you want to call them, either professional loosely, but versus recreational weekender fishermen?
Over our way? Oh, I think you're probably 20% guides, 80% recreational. I mean, we don't have the number of guides like the Western Basin.
But I mean violation wise. You think?
Violation wise? Oh, the guides they're very, very far and few between. Now we do have some problem childs that we dealt with every year, but for the most part, my way, the guides are pretty good. I mean, they pretty much maintain themselves. They know they're doing it for a living, and they got to do it the right way. But there's still a few that, except for meatball. And there's
Brian,
a few
Brian, what about in your zone that you kind of patrol? Is that the same kind of basic thing, or?
Oh, yeah.
I know some guys down my way that have a reputation that, as Matt calls them, the problem child. Maybe it's the same type of deal,
definitely is. There's I gotta think how to say it. There's definitely problem children. I think some of them don't think they're real captains unless they've got at least one ticket. Then they're kind of part of the crew. Then they're part of the cool kids club. Maybe, I don't know. But I would say there's about 1,000, close to 1,000 licensed charter captains in Ohio right now, and most of them do a really good job. But we know, and I'm sure Ross, you probably have an idea. There's some that don't always do everything just right, and
I think if we were to compare lists, we would be strangely close.
Yeah, I'm sure we would. I'll let you go first.
Yeah. We'll take some
Yeah,
notes.
yeah. Oh, I saw what you did there, Copper. I got you. So, I mean, we could definitely go on. I'm fascinated by some of the stuff and just hearing some of the behind the scenes and stuff. So I can't thank you enough for that. But I guess, kind of closing this up again, and to maybe some of this is fun, but some of this is hopefully a little bit educational for guys too, because again, I don't know where someone could claim ignorance on some of these. I'm sure there's some somewhat reasonable cases and sometimes, but is there anything that either one of you guys could kind of leave us with that would make it easier for both of us to do our jobs as a responsible, fisherman or hunter, or, with you guys? You know what I mean? Is there something that kind of pops up or something you have to educate people on seemingly too often that you're like, why am I explaining this? Or, you know what I mean? Why are a lot of people doing the same violation aside from just grossly taking too many fish or shooting a deer with no tag? Or
I think the thing that pops into mind for me is leaving your fillets whole. The fillets need to be whole. It doesn't matter what kind of fish it is. They got to be whole until you reach your permanent residence, or if you're about to eat them. If people usually cut walleye up into smaller pieces to eat them. So we see that all the time, and we try to educate people on them when we can. And some people have been told not to do it, and they keep doing it, and then they get a different kind of education. But I think that's the main thing that jumps out. And with the perch regulations this year, we do have some changes. The limit is different over Matt's way. We're down to 20 now over there in the Eastern Basin. So
circling back there a little bit before we get too far off that. So we're leaving. We don't have to leave skin on any longer. That was a thing for a little bit. And some places, other places, you do have to do that for identification purposes. But so basically, we're gonna, even if you want to zipper that fish, you still have to leave the tag end or whatever. So we still have that thing together primarily.
Mm-hmm. You can zipper a fish and have it still be in one piece. That tail piece, there's no bone in there. So take that out, but leave the tail piece together.
Right on, there you go. So then let's say we're staying at an Airbnb down there and we're an hour away from our house or whatever, but we're staying for a long weekend or something, and we've got these. How can we package these that we're going to be compliant with you, but also reasonable for transportation?
In a manner in which they can be counted. So most people put them flat. If you want to add water or not add water, that's up to you. It depends, I think, if you have a vacuum sealer or not, whether you add water to it, but just flat. A lot of guys I see, they'll say, this is 2 fish per package, for example. I don't know what you see, Matt, but I think that's the most common thing I see is 2 fish per package. And, you just easy to count the packages that way. There's, it's just they got to be whole fillets. 1 fish is 2 pieces of meat, and got to be able to count them. No skin has to be on there. They don't have to be dated. Does it help? Sure, as long as they're not dated for times that you weren't here.
Yeah. Well, going on, Brian, one thing I do tell them, I usually tell them to put their name, the date, and how many fish they had on that date. Not that it's a law that you have to do it, but it sure makes it a lot easier for us to come in. If they got 2 days of fish, they got their 6 walleye in one bag, 6 walleye in the other bag. They got their name on it. They got the date they caught them. I think it goes a long way to really help us, and it helps them also.
Yeah, we often see guys. There'll be 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 boats staying in one house. So earlier this year, I had a group. There was 3 boats in one house. And the one boat had already been ticketed for overbagging, so they knew not to go back out. But the other boat, even the guys in the house told me, they said, we told them not to do that. They're over their limit. Get them. So, which we already had got them.
Misery loves company.
Yeah.
Oh, it was unbelievable. But we go in there and, there's just a massive pile of fish, and we had done surveillance, so we knew how many fish they had in the morning. So, but then, how do you know whose fish is whose? And like Matt said, it's not a law, but if you have your name on them, that certainly helps.
Help me help you, right?
Basically, people are party fishing. So, there's maybe 3 boats worth of people, and they just throw them. They're literally a cooler full of fillets. It was like the bathtub, except it was a cooler. And, they're in there. But those guys were told, they told them not to go out. You're going to get caught. Don't do that. And they went and did it anyway. So I'm sure it was a long ride home listening to their buddies rip on them for getting caught.
Well, you know what that probably was? I mean, I feel like this is a deal where There was probably a brother-in-law in there. There was probably a best friend.
Yeah.
And there was probably they had to get busted too, or they weren't going to be able to go on the fishing trip, and that guy was. But if they all got a little bit of shit hitting the fan, then all of a sudden it shares the blame, and maybe they both wouldn't be banned from going. I feel like there could be something like that there. Yeah, misery loves company. That's 100%.
One funny.
Yeah, go
One
ahead.
little funny detail about that is when they went out in the morning, there was 3 guys on the boat. When they went out in the afternoon, only 2 of them went. And I asked that guy, I said, why didn't you go in the afternoon? He said, we got our limit. I told him not to do that. I'm not, the one guy had enough sense not to go. Good for him.
So I hope I know the answer to this. That guy then did not get a ticket.
Correct. I thanked him. I said, I appreciate you doing the right thing.
Okay. Well, we found out about meatballs. You guys, if you don't know what that is, you obviously did not listen to the beginning of this, because that's one of my favorite parts. Is you guys were like little schoolgirls giggling with that. We all kinds of that we were kind of all over the place. That's the best part of this. Is just boom, all over wackiness. If you think about it, I hope people appreciate this. The amount of hours that went into making those stories happen.
Yeah,
that's not beyond me. I can appreciate all those stuff, because
That
how many times
that West
do you have
Virginia
the
case, right? That West Virginia case, I think I had 22 hours that day. 22 hours. By the time that we first did surveillance to putting evidence in the freezer that night, or that next morning, actually.
And how many times, like kind of where I was going with that is so you got 22 hours and obviously a successful case, if you call it that. And then how many times do you have one that just doesn't go your way, or maybe they don't catch them, and you still got all that time, and you kind of, you don't get the gold at the end of the rainbow there, whatever you want to say. But at any rate, so I guess what we can learn out of this is if you want to be a criminal, there's always ways to do it. But we got a couple guys here that are going to make it a lot more difficult on you, and they're going to also take some money out of your pocket. And just don't be that guy, right? Don't be that guy. We got enough walleyes out here. Don't be that guy, especially with our very liberal possession laws and all that other stuff. But I can't thank you guys enough for giving us your time here. I know you guys we're both working double duties. I was in 6-footers this morning. It was very nasty out of the east. Fortunately, me and one other guy caught 45 walleyes that we all kept, and it was amazing. But I didn't put any pictures on Facebook, so perhaps,
I'm on Snapchat.
Yeah.
Now I'm a much wiser criminal after this hour and 30 minutes right here. But in all seriousness, Matt Fisher and Brian Burry with the Ohio Division of Wildlife. I'm going to call them game wardens, even though I think they're investigators, and that sounds much more sophisticated. Hopefully, you guys be kind to those guys out there. They're trying to help us, not hurt us. I can't thank you enough for your time, and I'm sure we'll have you back on at some point, because unfortunately, as much as we say or do, or people listen to this, you're going to have a job. Like, your job isn't going anywhere. There's going to be enough people. Just cops aren't going away. So thanks again for your time. Make sure you check us out at bigwaterfishing.com. If you can't find us, you probably suck at catching walleyes, because we are everywhere that Bigwater Fishing is. TikTok even, Instagram, Facebook, just about everywhere. So check us out. We got this podcast. We do weekly videos. We got all kinds of good stuff out there, and even a little bit of fun stuff, a little bit of educational stuff. So until the next episode.